Okay, we're recording now.
So what was the last thing I said,
You were
Carmen?
talking about the powerhouse, the pharmacology, and the
Oh, yeah.
doctor.
Yeah, so she said since I had not been on meds for a while, I could join 2 of her studies and then become one of her patients. So that's the way I got into her system. So I started working at some movement studies with her, and then she immediately put me on meds. And so I'm on a combination I'm on a cocktail of actually 6 different medications.
Wow.
4 of them are directly related to Parkinson's. The gold standard was developed in the 60s. It's called Sinemet. It was the only one used for a long time. The problem with Sinemet is that it develops, I'm going to forget the word, you may remember, it starts with a B, brick. It's the involuntary movements. So sometimes you'll see folks with Parkinson's disease who have involuntary movements, that it's not the Parkinson's, it's the effect of Sinemet. So what she tries to do with this cocktail is keep side effects minimal by mixing a bunch of stuff together. She's Chinese, she's probably in her 50s, and I would say, Carmen, she has just been a gift from God, because her affect is so upbeat. She's always so positive, and she cares about the whole person. It's clearly that she has an Eastern kind of philosophy, where she's not just treating your body, but she's also attending to you as a whole person. And she attends to Heidi. So Heidi goes with me. And she always asks Heidi, how am I doing? But then also, how is Heidi doing? And what are Heidi's anxieties? So it is really so helpful. And if I have any change, so every now and then I'll notice a change in my symptoms, either the tremors increase, or I get more rigidity or something. She will always call me in. She always insists on seeing me in person, fits me into her schedule, and then sits down with me and spend an hour with me. And she has this really interesting way of thinking about it, which is, you could use as an analogy for lots of things. But she said, it's always in the history. So she will backtrack from where I am today and go back to when I started having the new symptoms and look at, what did I change? What happened that I did differently? So a year ago, I was really tremoring in the summertime, and I'm also on a low dose of antidepressant and also anti-anxiety med, because Parkinson's, you lose serotonin because you're losing dopamine, and so you're losing serotonin as well. And so anxiety and depression tend to go up with Parkinson's. And so I was not sleeping, which is typical of Parkinson's also. So even I struggled. I still struggle. I've been up since 2:30. I had my first cup of coffee at 2:30 this morning, and I've been going strong ever since. But I sleep better than I did because of these other two meds. But she said, what happened? And I said, well, I went off my anti-anxiety med. I didn't think I needed it anymore. And she said, it has a half-life that'll take about 3 weeks to kick in. And she said, when did you really start to tremor? And I said, 3 weeks ago. So it helps me to relax a bit, to know that there are changes taking place over time, but they are slow changes. And if it's a radical change, it's probably related to something I'm doing differently. So sleep is tremendously important, and getting enough sleep. I worked with Jacob over the weekend, Saturday, in doing some demo work in his house. And then I preached Sunday and taught Sunday school, or did something else Sunday. I was wiped out. I was just exhausted. And I know my friends with Parkinson's, they often build a nap into their day. And part of it is that you're tremoring all the time, which in and of itself creates fatigue.
Right.
I wish it burned more calories, Carmen, but it creates fatigue. So that's kind of the long and short of, I would say, I notice changes. I notice changes in my speech. I notice changes in the tremors, greater rigidity. But there's nothing at this point that I can't do that I used to do.
Mhm.
So last night I was having trouble with, well, I don't text very well. Um, and the keyboard has been a gift yet because for the most part, I'm pretty good yet on the keyboard. But last night, Heidi was watching me and I was just struggling. You know, it was late and I was, yeah, it was just, so those are pieces that I watch, subtle changes that are taking
Mhm.
place.
Mhm. Um, wasn't there at some point you went to a therapy group?
So
It
I
was,
joined Rocksteady Boxing
yes.
support
Tell
group.
the students
So
about that.
yeah, I will. Rocksteady Boxing is it's a national organization that was begun in Indianapolis about a decade ago. And they now have chapters all over the country and around the world, in some areas of the world as well. And it's a support group, but it's it's um, it's all exercise. So it's boxing. So we use the large boxing bags, flex bags, and also bags that hang off the wall. But then it's all around body conditioning. It includes yoga because yoga's been we thing about Parkinson's is everything pulls in, Carm. Everything
Really?
everything gets small. And so everything moves inward. And so it's part of what's so critical to Parkinson's is continuing to open up. Both in terms, so I've had therapy, speech therapy, and I forget what it's called, but it's about being loud because it affects, and I've had testing that shows this, that my vocal cords are being diminished or being affected
Really?
by this. And so the more that I talk, the better off. Heidi will often say to me, "What did you say?" And so I've had to learn to really, because what I hear is, I hear normal sound, but it's not coming out. I mean, it's softer. And
Mhm.
so big movements are part of the deal. It's part of working at it, and stretching and strengthening and balance. Stretching, strengthening, and balancing are really, really important. So I joined this group. We haven't met since COVID, so I'll start back when we're meeting again. But it was a lifesaver for me because the first year I cried a lot and I was really angry. I was just pissed off because it just seemed, I mean, I've been through enough already, it felt like, and it just seemed unfair. I remember being at the gym working out and I'd just be crying because it just seemed unfair. Going to this group was so helpful to me. Although the first day I went, I walked in and I saw these folks and they welcomed me. I knocked on the door and they said, "Are you one of us?" And I said, "Well, I guess so." So I came in. I was nervous. They said, "Will you join our team this morning?" It was tremendously welcoming. And but I looked at them. I went home that night and I said to Heidi, "It was good, but I can't go back." Um, it felt comfortable, like a safe place. But I watched them, and they were 5 years ahead of me, and 10 years ahead of me, and 15 years ahead of me. And so I could see myself. You know, I could see myself where I'm going, and that felt like I wasn't ready for that. Um, Heidi pretty clearly said, "You have no choice. I'm asking you to go." And so that was a lifesaver for me, Carm, because we don't talk about our disease. We talk about it if like someone might find out there's a new drug out, or we pay a lot of attention to what's happened with Michael J. Fox's organization. And Peloton is doing a new study right now. So I've got some friends involved with Peloton. Some of them, it's a random study. So some of them got bikes, machines, some of them didn't get machines. And so, you know, every now and then we'll find out there's dietary stuff, nutrition stuff. So it's a great way of finding stuff out without having to go to the doctor, you know, all the
Mhm.
time, because we're all being treated. And it normalized it for me. Like I was one of the few people who's still working full time,
Okay.
but they were working part time and they were traveling to Europe, seeing their grandchildren. And I just realized that I could still have a life.
Mhm.
And many of them have had the disease for a long time and they still have a life. And I began to recognize that it wasn't that I couldn't have a life, but my life was going to have to change, that I could not keep living the way I had been living without being really frustrated all the time.
Mhm.
And that took a while to kind of come to grips with, but that was really helpful, that group. And I've taken students to that group. So one of the other things I've done is I decided early on that I wanted to develop a course on aging for the college. So I developed a course with the chair of the occupational therapy department, Tamara Humbert. Um, and so Dr. Humbert and I developed a course called Aging, Spirituality, and Regeneration. Because the winter that I started to tremor, without knowing I had Parkinson's, Heidi bought me a book called, I can't remember it right now, but it's about midlife.
Mhm.
And it was written by a woman in midlife, but it's highly documented in terms of science. She came to Christ. She's actually Christian. Came to Christ as an adult, but it's highly documented in terms of scientific discovery and the latest on the brain. So there's a lot on the brain and what you can do to regenerate the brain. And the and there's just a lot of work being done these days in neurology and neuroscience on the actual ability to regenerate brain cells. And so I was reading all of this, not knowing that I had a brain disorder. Again, it felt like the hand of God, just like God was preparing me for what was to come.
Mhm.
And that book is kind of the core text that Tam and I developed. And then we developed this course. We had 8 students in it, and it went really well. I brought in some of my friends from Rocksteady Boxing. I actually took students down to participate in Rocksteady Boxing. I had a friend with Alzheimer's, just early onset Alzheimer's, who joined the class and would sit in and talk with us. We went to the Area Agency on Aging office. So that was another way for me just to kind of share. I think what's important to me is what can I offer at this point in my life that's useful to people.
Mhm.
And Heidi is so open, Carmen, to me talking.
I can't hear you again.
Can you hear me?
There you are. Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
You can hear me.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Can you speak?
Can you hear me now? I can hear you. You can hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a wife who's tremendously transparent about this and who wants me to talk about it, wants to hear about it if there are changes that take place in my body. And Carmen, that has been huge because if I had to pretend that I didn't have this, I have a friend whose wife has Parkinson's and she won't allow him to tell anyone.
Oh,
And he won't talk about it and she denies it. And it's been 4 or 5 years and she's depressed and it's no way to live. So it has, I think because Heidi's open about it, it has caused, I often think that I'm like 10 years ahead of where most of my peers are. So I'm 56 in thinking about like what life, like I think I'm thinking probably more like a 65-year-old or 70-year-old these days, just in thinking about life as a horizon. You know,
mhm.
that I'm just so aware that my life has a horizon and I don't know where it is, but in terms of quality of health and what I can do. So it's impacted lots of decisions we're making that I actually am happy we're making. I'm retiring from ministry at the end of the year, which is the most stressful thing that I do. I don't find teaching stressful. I love teaching. I love my kids. I feel really connected to them. I get a lot of life out of that. And we love having Jacob and Sarah and Ezra close by. So just committing to saying we're going to be available to them. COVID has helped with that. You know, COVID has really helped us to say, okay, this is the way we want to live our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is because of Parkinson's. And so we're doing some travel. We cut out, I have a sabbatical for the fall. I'm actually developing, Carmen, a podcast on health, spirituality, and aging. That will be a multi-faith ecumenical approach to thinking about spirituality. So a podcast, but also doing some writing, interviewing folks for that. So the college is loving what I'm doing right now, and giving me space to do that. So we build in some time to travel out west. We're taking some time off this summer. So just thinking about how do we want to live our lives now? That's really helpful to me.
Yeah, that would completely change your outlook.
Yeah.
You're what's important.
Yeah, it has. It really has. I was living a rat race. All good stuff. But now I sit in a committee meeting in church and I'm just like, this is just not where I want to be. Like, there was a time when I thought this was really, really important. And I'm sure for some people it really is important, but it's not for me anymore.
Right.
And so it's just really, it's impacted who I want to spend my time with, what I want to, Yeah.
What would be some things that you would like to tell healthcare workers? I really appreciate what you said about like how that doctor said that to you. Like those are things not to say to a patient. So, you know, a room full of healthcare worker or trainees, what would you like to say to my students?
So just if you don't know what's going on, don't blow it off and move on to another topic. I mean, whether you know the patient or not, stay focused on what they came there for. That's what irritated me so much about the first physician, because he knew my life outside of the office. So he turned to he said, there's nothing to worry about. Now, how about this in your life? And that, I was so irritated. The second doc who did diagnose it, Carmen, also said to me later, you don't want this disease. It's all encompassing. Well, that was like not helpful. Like,
right. It's not like you handpicked that off of a shelf.
Exactly. And can I give it back now?
Right.
I mean, so I think just the callous things that people say in healthcare that I don't get, like they haven't suffered enough, you know, they haven't been through enough to understand that you just don't say those things. So I think empathy is incredibly important, because, you know, and like the physician who used the negative to say I had Parkinson's disease, it was like she didn't want to come right out and say to me, I think you have PD. She said, I don't think there's an alternative diagnosis. Well, I knew what she was saying, but just be direct with me. I think through the cancers I've had and through Parkinson's, I have always said, I want my eyes to be open to what's happening. Just tell me what's going on, because control is really important for someone who's going through an illness. And knowledge is part of control. To be able to control anything, you have to know what's going on. And so if people are hiding information or not telling you the full truth or what might be the truth, you don't know where to look. So you'll look on Google, you know, and then that's craziness.
It is.
And so I've always said, just tell me the truth. Just tell me, I want my eyes to be open, because then at least I can control the decisions that I make with my life. So I think that kind of honesty, not being afraid, because people are more resilient than we give them credit for. People can handle the truth better than we think they can. And the fact that they might cry, the fact that they might
grieve. Of course they're going to grieve. Of course they're going to
Mhm.
cry. So I think being able to handle that and not be intimidated by that,
Mhm.
being able to be caring through that, but to say, well, of course you're going to feel this way. It's normal for you to feel this way. It's normal
Right.
to feel afraid. That's one of the things Dr. Wong does so well is she normalizes the disease. And she has another patient who has a PhD and is a researcher, and she'll often tell me his story as a way of normalizing my story. And he'll say, well, he's still doing this, and he's still doing that, and he's older than I am, but he's still, and it just, the normalizing of it, not taking it seriously, but giving me a sense of control and normalcy is really, really important.
Mhm.
And if you don't have the answers, if you can, assuring the person that you'll try to find the answers.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
don't know. Those are some things that I think are really important for me.
That's really good. So be direct and be empathetic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And be prepared to handle whatever emotions are expressed, because
Right.
there will be, if you're honest,
Right.
probably.
And we need to be okay with that.
We do need to be okay with that, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's that whole person.
Yeah. One last thing I just want to ask you, and this is
Yeah.
because you have students too. So I'm going off topic a little bit.
That's fine.
But so I have a lot of students, and it's near graduation time, and what words would you have for my students?
Sure.
There's so much pressure on teens, and you have to figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life. And it's getting to be that time of year. So what
Yeah.
advice would you have for my seniors?
There are three things that, as I've watched students be successful, and of course how you measure success varies, but students who have been most successful are students who are willing to work really hard. You're just not going to get where you want to go without working hard, whatever that means in whatever field you're in. Two, taking some risks. Not crazy risks, but for my students, it would be agreeing to submit their paper to a paper competition, or to do a guest lecture in a class, or give a presentation. What is that thing that stretches you? Because we don't grow until we're stretched. I often tell my students that suffering, I've told them for years, suffering is our best teacher, if we allow it to be, because it's only then that we get stretched. We will not learn and grow if we're comfortable. So what are the things that, as they move towards graduation and as they think about what they do next, that are going to really stretch them to grow and make them uncomfortable, because they have more within them than they know they do. And so one of the things I do a lot with my students is try to name what I see that they don't see. What are the qualities that are within them, whether it's persistence, whether it's hard work, whether it's whatever it is, because those are powerful things for you and I as teachers to name them. And the third is integrity. I always tell them, you can take risks and work hard, but if you don't tell the truth, it will always catch up with you. So you'll end up on the front page of the paper for all the wrong reasons if you don't tell the truth. And the consequences of telling the truth are always less harsh than not telling the truth. And the other thing I say to them these days is, the world is looking for people who love what they do. There are too many people who don't love what they do. And so what is it that they love to do? And what is it that they're willing to work really hard at because they love what they do and take some risks at, and have integrity in? I mean, the world is dying for people who love what they do, who are just passionate about what they do. And I tell my students, there's always a place for those people. And there's always a place for people who are passionate, work hard, take risks. That's my sermon, Carmen.
That's awesome. So I'll just let it wrap up with that.
Okay.
This has been just a pleasure.
Well, thank you. For me too.
I'm very, very thankful, first of all, that I know you and that I'm related to you. I'm very proud of that.
Thank you, Carmen.
And I admire how you've handled the very hard things you've gone through.
Thank you.
It has formed you into a wonderful man. And I'm blessed to know you. So blessings to you. Thanks again. I really appreciate it.
And to you, and Tim.
Bye.